Hey, Laura again here with This Neogenean Life. I want to tell you about a few changes I'm making about this Neogenean life here. I still will be telling stories and I still will be tying Neogeneanism in more, but I want to talk more about Neogeneanism and what that is. Not today so much, I will some, but my next video is going to be why Neogeneanism. That one's going to be packed with why Neogeneanism for me and for my life and why this is this Neogenean life. So I would really like you to come to that one or come see that one. And another thing is eventually I want to start making live streams once in a great while. So that will be probably telling a story, and then you guys can ask me questions and we'll talk about it, and we'll talk about whatever you want, whatever I can talk about. Don't ask me too hard of questions. But anyway, so that's something to look forward to, but that's going to be off in the future a while. That won't be anytime soon. In fact, I think I might make a deal with you about that, like maybe so many subscribers, and I'll do a live stream if you guys want. Let me know. Because right now, mostly the only people watching this are the ones that I know personally. I think. I may be wrong about that. But all of you that are watching, whoever's watching, talk to me in the comments. Let me know what you think. Let me know what you don't think. Let me know what you like, what you don't like. It's my channel, yeah, and I'm going to do what I want because I'm just that darn stubborn. But I would like it to be interesting to you, because otherwise, what's the point? Not for my vanity, that's for sure. If it was about for my vanity, I'd get my hair fixed and put on my earrings like I forgot today and, do all those things. Rings and baubles, and I like shiny and sparkly and all those things. So today, though, I want to tell you about a squirrel named Smokey. When I was a little girl, I was being raised by my grandparents, and we used to go camping in eastern Oregon every year. Now, we lived over on the Oregon coast, and we camped over there too, but once a year, normally, we would go over to eastern Oregon to camp, and which I always thought was magical to me because sometimes we saw sagebrush, and we saw sage, and there were pine trees, and you could see between them. There was no underbrush. On the coast, it's mostly fir trees, and there's all kinds of brush under the trees. So, like, you can't walk between the trees in most forests unless you make a path or you climb over and under things, over logs, between bushes, in through the bushes. You get them caught in your hair, caught on your clothes. But in eastern Oregon, we could just walk around between the pine trees without underbrush, and it was, for a little girl that hadn't been experiencing that, it was magical. It was like the forest in the movies. So I loved it over there. Well, one year we went camping, and the place that we camped, I don't know why, had a fireplace in it, a rock fireplace. It was like a fireplace you might find in an old house. There were no remnants of a house there, so I don't know if there had been a house there or what, but there was a rock fireplace. And to me, it looked wide and big enough to be one in a house. I don't know now, little kids. I don't know how old I was, but I was at least probably about 6 or 7. I'm not sure. So in this fireplace, there was a little ledge. Well, here's the chimney. Okay, the chimney went up, and there was a little ledge that came out a little bit, like this. But then the chimney came out and up above the ledge, and the smoke would go up to that ledge, curl back, and go up the chimney and out. Well, because it hadn't been being used, it was summer and nobody'd been camping there, I guess, for a while yet. Maybe it was spring. And a mama squirrel had made her nest back up in that little ledge back there. We didn't know it. We couldn't see her. It was all dark back there, and the ledge went back quite a ways. So she made a little nest back there, and she had her babies. I don't know how many, but there were a few. So as we built a bonfire in the evening and the smoke started curling up there, the little babies started crawling out toward the light from the fire, I'm assuming. I don't know, but they got to crawling out to the edge, and Papa and Grandma would take turns pushing them back in, back toward the nest. Pushing, 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 just pushing them back into their mama so they wouldn't fall in the fire. And we kept an eye on them, and they finally went to sleep, I think, for the night, and so did we. And the next morning we got up, and Papa and I went for an early morning walk, a hike. That's what we usually did. We looked for rocks, and we found things like obsidian and jasper, different colors of jasper. Once in a while we found an arrowhead that was left over from some time. Usually those were in the streams. Sometime, back in the 1800s probably. And we found different things. But we went on this walk this one time. We sat down on a log and we were eating peanuts in the shells. And I remember this because this was another one of those magical times for me. I was sitting there with Papa, who was the absolute hero of my life. I thought he was the strongest man on earth, the smartest man on earth. And he was my hero. And he always took me with him. Not every time he went, but we went fishing a lot, and we went hiking and that kind of thing. So we went on this hike, and we're sitting there. We sat down on a log to take a rest, and we were eating peanuts. And Grandpa was telling me wisdom of the ages, I'm assuming. It felt like it at the time, and I felt so good that he was sharing important things with me. I don't know what they were now, but I learned a lot from Papa, and I didn't realize until after he passed away just how much I'd learned from him. And I told him so. But anyway, I digress. So we started walking back toward camp, and when we got to camp, Grandma had the coffee ready for Papa. Now, Papa liked carnation, not sweetened condensed milk, but just canned milk, carnation canned milk in his coffee. He didn't like regular milk, just carnation canned. And so Grandma always took it with us on our camping trips, and that was easy to keep fresh anyway. It was fresh till we opened it, and then she'd keep it in the ice chest. So Grandpa we'd get back, and Grandma would say, "Oh, you're just in time. I just made a fresh pot of coffee." And she would already have his coffee poured and in his cup, waiting for him, and the steam would be coming off. And he'd say, "Well, thank you." And we'd all sit down, and Papa would have his coffee, and we'd talk about this and that. And so we came back that time, and I asked Grandma, now maybe it wasn't that time, but at one time I asked Grandma, "How do you always know when we're getting close to camp?" Or how do you always know when to make the coffee so it's fresh and hot and just right for Papa? And she said, "Well, I can hear your voice from on the other side of the hill. I can always hear you coming. I can hear you talking before you guys get close. So I know it's time to start the coffee." We had a big old camping pot that she would percolate the coffee in over the fire. Only we had a Coleman stove, and she often did it on the Coleman stove, because why build a fire just for, one or two little things. And it was morning. We didn't need the fire for heat. We liked it especially at night because it was fun to have a campfire and roast marshmallows. So, no fire in the fireplace. Grandma made coffee, and I discovered that my voice was louder than most. Imagine that. I talked all the time. So, I know some of you will say, "Oh, no surprise there. Hi, Mary. I know you're saying it." So Grandma said she had a surprise for us, and we had no idea what it could be. So she pulled out this shoebox, and she had a piece of white fabric in there. It was from one of Grandpa's t-shirts, white t-shirts. He always wore these white cotton t-shirts underneath any shirt he wore. And so Grandma got it out, and there was a big chunk of white t-shirt in there. And she lifted it up, and underneath there was, all snuggled in, was a tiny baby squirrel. Now, these were not big squirrels like the red squirrels you see and the gray squirrels. These were small. They were like the size of a chipmunk. I'm going to put pictures up. I hope you should have seen a picture in the thumbnail, and I'll put some other pictures up for you. So hopefully those will be up when you see this. So these were called lava squirrels or golden mantle squirrels. And they were about the size of a chipmunk. And they have little stripes on their back. And sometimes people mistake them for chipmunks because of the size and the coloring and stuff. They look a lot like it. But they're squirrels. So Smokey got his name because Grandma had seen him. She didn't see him up on the ledge, but she saw the coal or the fire, the ashes in the fireplace moving. And she thought, what in the world is that? And she thought it was some big bug, a beetle or something. So she took a stick and she kind of flipped it out on the ground. And lo and behold, it was this baby chipmunk. Just like a little newborn rat or mouse or something. Had no hair. I think its eyes were closed. I don't quite remember, but it seems like it. From what I recollect, it just looked like a little hairless rat, baby mouse or some baby rat. So, but it was so cute because, you know, we knew it was a squirrel. And so it was like, oh my gosh. And Grandma said she tried to put it back up on the ledge, but the mama squirrel wouldn't take it back. Probably because it smelled like ashes, and maybe it smelled like Grandma. She had brushed the ashes off as best she could, but the mama squirrel would not take it back. So Grandma had to rescue it. In the meantime, the mama squirrel took all the other babies out of I don't even know how she got out. Maybe she went up the chimney and out. I don't know. But she took all the other baby squirrels up the hill to an old stump and made a new nest up there with them. So we had this little baby squirrel, and Grandma decided to name it Smokey because he came from the ashes. So maybe we should have named him Phoenix, huh? So Grandma named him Smokey, and she didn't know if she could keep him alive. And she didn't have any kind of little baby bottles or anything to give him, or doll bottles or eyedroppers or anything. So she took a piece of Papa's white t-shirt material, that cloth fabric, and she cut it. I don't know, she cut it. She cut a little triangular piece or something, and she would dip that in that canned milk. She mixed the canned milk, half canned milk and half water. Evaporated milk, that's what it's called. Because a vet had told her one time the perfect thing to feed some orphaned puppies that she had was half canned milk and half water. Because back in those days, they didn't have special formula for baby animals. I don't even know if they had special formula for baby children. I suppose they did, but I don't think it was an average normal thing to do, or the average thing. Because this was in the late 50s. So, Grandma, I was born in 1952, so this was in the late 50s. So Grandma would dip this little piece of fabric in this mixture of half milk and half warm water. And she'd give it she'd put it in front of the little squirrel, and he would suck on it and suck the milk out. She'd keep doing that until he was full. And so she did that for the whole, I think we were there for about a week. By the end of that week, he'd been growing hair. His eyes were open. He would sit in a teaspoon. I thought I might have one here, but I don't. They're all in the kitchen, which is probably good. He would sit in a teaspoon, not a measuring spoon, but a teaspoon like you used to stir coffee or eat soup or something. And he would lick milk out of the teaspoon. That's how tiny he was. It was so cute. So Smokey grew up, and we had him for 7 years. his natural lifespan in the wild was 3 years, according to a forest ranger we talked to one time. But because he was in captivity and he was cared for and he didn't have the problems of a squirrel out in the wild, he lived for 7 years. We had so much fun with that squirrel. Papa bought a great big cage like you see in the stores that they have parakeets in, or canaries or something like that, birds like that, in a pet store. And we had a Sprouse Right store where we lived, small town, and they had canaries and things like that. And I don't know if he bought a used cage for them or if he got from them, or if he got them to buy a new cage and paid for the new cage. But he got them somehow to get him a cage. And he put a big wheel in it for Smokey to run on. Because we had a little small cage, the size that you would get for like 1 or 2 hamsters maybe. And it had a wheel in it, but it was kind of small for Smokey. Small for hamsters, for that matter. So he made this big wheel. I think it was probably about 18 inches in diameter. I'm not kidding. It was big. And it fit in this big cage. And it was very heavy, but Papa made it. He was very good at mechanics and working with wood and different things. And so he made this squirrel, he put this in the squirrel cage, and he made this wheel so it turned very easily. And I remember being a little amazed at how easily it turned for such a heavy wheel. Well, Smokey loved it. We put him in that big cage. He would get in that wheel and he would start running, and he would run faster and faster and faster. And around goes the wheel and around goes the wheel. And Smokey would all of a sudden dig his claws in and just hang on for dear life and just go swinging around, going around in a circle. It was like his little private Ferris wheel, big private Ferris wheel. And he would do that until the wheel slowed down and it would almost stop. And he'd let go and he'd jump up and he'd start running again. And he would do that, I don't know, probably hours. They built a little box for Smokey, a little wooden box. Papa made a wooden box with a hole in it big enough for him to make a little nest in, because squirrels like to have their little dark corners, kind of like cats do sometimes. So he had this little box and he would go in there and, make his little nest. He had water and food, and we kept everything he needed in there. Well, one time he stayed in his nest and he didn't want to come out. And that was unusual. So Papa and Grandma were afraid something was wrong with him. So they got him out of there, got to looking at him, and he was kind of lethargic and wasn't acting right. And his squirrels like to put things in their cheeks. They'll put as many nuts or whatever in their cheeks as they can carry, and then they'll take them and bury them or put them in their little corner, their little hidey place or whatever. Well, we gave him all kinds of fresh nuts. We would crack them and give them to him. So they got to looking, and he had back in his cheek, one of his cheeks, he had a half a walnut. And it was stuck back in there. He'd gotten it in there and he couldn't get it out. Well, it began to decay and it smelled horrible and it was making him sick. So I don't know how they held him still. Probably wrapped him in a washcloth or something to hold him still. And Papa picked out every little bit of that nut that he could get. And then they kind of washed his mouth out with water. And he was fine after that. He got fine. Took him a couple of days to kind of recoup, but then he was fine and he was back to himself. The other thing about Smokey is Grandma used to like to let him out during the day while she was cleaning his cage, and sometimes while she was cleaning the house, because we were all careful and we knew to be careful if Smokey was out. We'd watch for him. We wouldn't step on him. But Grandma had long dresses. She wore long dresses. Later on, she started wearing pedal pushers, which were the ugliest pants I ever saw. I thought, oh my gosh, please don't let my friends see you in those as I got older, when I started caring about what friends thought. Pedal pushers were baggy pants that came down about oh, below your knees. They were pedal pushers because you could ride your bike without getting them caught in the pedals or anything, the chain or anything else. But I still think they're ugly. I never bought a pair, never wore a pair. But Grandma liked them because they were really comfortable and she could do anything in them. But back when she was wearing dresses, when we first had Smokey, she'd wear these long dresses that went all the way to the floor, and she'd walk around the house cleaning house. Smokey would grab a hold of that dress on the way by, and then as she walked around the house, he would just swing and swing. He loved it. He'd just hold on and swing, and she knew right where he was at. She didn't have to worry about stepping on him. So he would do that, I don't know, half the day or something. So one time, Grandma was cleaning Smokey's cage, and he was up on top of it, or he ran up on top of it, and Grandma did something he didn't like. I really can't remember what it was, but he ran over and he nipped her finger a little bit. Didn't really hurt it, didn't make it bleed or anything, but he nipped at her finger. So she took a clothespin, that's what it was. She had taken a clothespin that she had handy. She probably had it in her pocket from doing laundry or something. And she bumped him on the nose a little bit to get him out of the way because he was getting in her way. So he ran up on top of the cage and he ran across the cage and then he bit at her finger. And she thumped him again with it a little bit, and he ran across the top of the cage, and he sat there, and he chattered at her. I swear he was cussing her out for having bumped him. She didn't hurt him, you know. I mean, he's a little tiny squirrel. She wasn't getting it. Barely bump him is all. So that was Smokey the squirrel. And Smokey died of natural causes. He just got old. Like I said, when he was 7, and that was sad, and we buried him out in the woods. But we had a lot of fun with Smokey. So that's the story of Smokey the squirrel. Now, my sister told me something I'd forgotten about. I was talking to her one day, and I was telling her I'd done a video, or was going to do a video on Smokey the squirrel. And she remembered something about him that I'd forgotten. One of the things was that one time we put him in the bathroom. I don't know why, but we put him in the bathroom, in the bathtub, his whole cage in the bathtub, the big cage. I think because we were going to be gone for a few days and they wanted to make sure that he was okay. I think they let him out of the cage so he could run around on top of the cage and around it. Probably plugged the, I don't know. And, but he got out of the tub and onto the floor, and he wanted out, and he went to the door of the bathroom and he chewed a big spot. By the time we got back, he had almost chewed through the molding. It was an old house, so the molding was very thick by the door. He had almost chewed his way out of the bathroom through that molding. It was like a beaver had been there or something, a miniature beaver. I didn't know they could chew that much. You know, I knew they chewed paper and straw and things like that. I had no idea they chew wood like that. So, yeah, that's about Smokey the squirrel. And I'll have more stories for you. Like I said, I do want to do live streams eventually. Let me know what you think about that. If you share my video plenty of times and enough people subscribe, I'll do that. That's my little bribe. I know it's shameless. It's a shameless bribe. But it's going to be a while before I do it anyway, because I'm just not prepared to do a live stream yet. I don't even know how to do a live stream yet, but I'll figure it out. I'm figuring this all out. So that's it for today. Let's see, what kind of Neogenean wisdom can I leave you with for today? I will say, don't be fooled by the things that you see and hear and you're taught out there in the world. Out there, I mean, you know, outside of my living room, whatever. Use logic and reason and look at things for yourself. If you have doubts about something you've been taught or something you've been told, you've heard, whether it's, I don't care if it's in school or church or where it is, question it. Always question everything. Question me. Question people you listen to on YouTube. Question everything. Check it out and see what you think. And then make your decisions. Don't just do something because somebody says so. When I was a kid, I told my grandma, I don't remember what it was, I wanted to do something and she didn't want to let me do it. And I said, but all the other kids are doing it. And she said, well, if I put a pile of dog poop out in the middle of the road and some kid came along and ate it, would you? And I, no, of course not. But, you know, the thing was, yeah, because I would think about it, I would know better than to do that. But if you don't think, you just follow. So don't be a follower, be a thinker. That's my word of wisdom for today. I'll see you all later. Don't forget, this Neogenian Life. I'm Laura, and I'm signing off.